moderator today will be Dr. Heather Grob. She teaches economics here at St. Martin's University. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We hope you learn a lot and have fun. All right, thank you.
Thank you to Chandler and our debaters today, Lisa Seifert and Pedro Celis. I really want to thank the Conservative Club for bringing to St. Martin's something that's really important to the university life, which is open debate. And it really shows what this country is all about, free and open exchange in a nonviolent setting. So, to that point, I think what we're going to do is we have a number of questions for our debaters. If you would please hold your comments or questions toward the end, we will have plenty of time for moderator, that's me, led discussion and debate then, including our audience. So enjoy, and I guess I'll just go ahead and jump into the first question. And that first question is pretty straightforward. Is there a current need for immigration reform in the United States? And that question will start with Lisa Seifert, who has 5 minutes, and then followed by Pedro Celis, who will have 5 minutes. And then we'll have 3 minutes for rebuttal for each. Okay?
All right. First of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Can you guys hear me? Do I need to do that? All right. Thank you, Chandler. Thank you, St. Martin's. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, all of you who came out for this. It's going to be fun. I'm really, really pleased to be asked to discuss this topic. For those of you who know me, I have been talking about this topic, immigration reform, for at least 20 years. As you may know, I've been practicing immigration law for 25 years. And during most of that time, us immigration lawyers are frustrated with the immigration system. So my answer to the first question is yes, there's a huge need for immigration reform, and it should be comprehensive. The current system really fails this country. It hurts families by splitting them up, and people have to wait for a long time. It hurts companies. Microsoft and many other countries cannot get the workers they need. Can't. Apple growers in Eastern Washington and other kind of agriculture businesses cannot get the workers they need. We need a system where it is easier to come in legally than illegally. Our current system really encourages lawlessness because we don't really monitor that southern border as we could, I suppose. So I am a person who thinks we should have strong borders, but we need to be serious about it if we're going to do it. And actually the hardest thing about immigration reform is what to do with the large undocumented population. We need to do something about that. It is a national shame that we have over 11 million undocumented people. We should be embarrassed about that. We can do much better. We can legalize that. So comprehensive immigration reform would fix the legal immigration system to make it logical so that families and businesses can bring who they need in this country. We need to, once and for all, legalize the undocumented population so that there is not the continuous incentive to come illegally. Let's make it sensible so that if a grower needs workers, they can get a temporary visa for those workers to come. If they don't want to stay, they can go home. Right now, that's not possible. I do a lot of work in family immigration and also removal defense or deportation defense. And one of the things I see that most seriously needs to be reformed is the deportation system. It is so inhumane. It doesn't give any quarter. There's no discretion in the immigration judge system for people who commit minor crimes many years ago. Under the immigration system right now, a shoplift in most states, thankfully not Washington anymore because it just changed, but a shoplifting crime is categorized as an aggravated felony in the immigration law. It's really Alice in Wonderland. How could something so minor be considered in the same category as killing a cop, for example. Doesn't make sense. Most federal judges think it's very, very complex. Few have given opinions such as it's more complicated than the tax code. Well, that's saying something. And it's partly because the system has been changed every few years. I mean, Congress does take cracks at it every once in a while. And the last time there was a really major change was in 1990. Happened to be when Bill Clinton was president. And that was a system which was mainly a penalty system. That's when we started to have, if you overstay your visa at all, it's automatically canceled. Huge penalties if you overstay. And I think the idea was that people would go home. But what it ended up doing was locking people in, because now it's very difficult to cross borders. Anyway, basically, we definitely need to have immigration reform. We need to change the current system. Where's the timekeeper?
Timekeeper is right there. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Oh, you can save my time.
Okay. All right.
My name is Pedro Celis, and again I want to thank you guys for inviting me to this event and the university for hosting the event and the group that you have formed here. Chandler called me about a month ago. I live in Redmond, Washington, so it's kind of quite a distance to come here, especially at this time of day. But the topic and the reason that he's, with the rest of you, is forming this group motivated me to come here. Immigration is a topic that is of interest to me because you might notice I have kind of a charming accent. I was born and raised in Mexico. I went to a university there and left Mexico to go to grad school, got a master's and a PhD in computer science in Canada. Had 2 daughters in Canada. Moved to the US to become a professor. Was a professor in computer science at Indiana University. Moved around, eventually moved to the Bay Area to work for a company a little bit north called Microsoft. And there I became a distinguished engineer and the chief technical officer of the SQL Server Group. And in the process we had 2 boys. So my wife and I were born in Mexico. I have 2 daughters who were born in Canada and 2 boys that were born in the US. So I always tell people we're an actor family. So immigration, I agree with some of the comments that were made about, our immigration system is broken. And I know I went through the whole process of coming here legally and becoming a citizen and inviting my brother to become a citizen, and that was kind of okay. I did the process 17 years later. I could bring him in, makes no sense, whether you ask me all this paperwork. He also had a PhD in computer science and he came through another company called Intel. So immigration is good, but there are 2 elements of immigration that you need to separate. One is that legal immigration is good. It's not just the story of this country, it is the story of the future of our country. Immigration is good for this country. But encouraging illegal immigration is not good for this country. This country was created by principles that we're ruled by law, not by men. That it's important that people follow the rules and the rule of law. This president, when he was running for office the very first time, he promised he will push for immigration reform. And he had control of the Senate and the House, anything happened. And eventually, he ended up doing a number of executive actions. But they do not address the allowing people to come here legally. It only addresses with the issue of what you do with people who are here illegally. How do you do with people who are here undocumented? And by doing that, he is undermining the rule of law, and his expression that is used now is poisoning the well. It's making it harder for Congress to actually move things forward. They're stuck. They always are. It's not like a great group of guys. There's a lot of issues there. But this is not the way to get things accomplished. When President Bush, 10 years ago, I don't know how much time I have, he appointed me to serve in a committee that he had, called the PTAC committee, the President's Information Technology Advisory Committee. So I went to DC once a month for a few days, for that committee, to advise him on issues having to do with preserving economic issues having to do with, computer science and stuff like that. But I got very involved with the Senate in those visits, and became at that time the national chairman of the Republican National Hispanic Assembly. And immigration was the issue that was being discussed in the Senate at that time. Still is. We still have that fixed that. And we need to understand that immigration is good for this country, and that we need a system to allow people to come here legally and not encourage more illegal immigration. Thank you.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes.
All right. I'm so glad you brought up the executive action. It's not immigration reform, it's not amnesty, it's just what the president did on November 20th. On that day when there was the speech in my office, we had a little party, right? We had wine, because we knew this was going to be a big deal. And I guess I would have to say that I think President Obama has tried really hard to get immigration reform passed. He has spoken about it many, many times. And actually, if you remember, just 2 years ago, the Senate did pass what would be considered a comprehensive immigration bill, which addressed both sides, the illegal side and the legal side. It made many reforms. And that passed the House, and it passed with a large, large margin. They had 66 votes, right? So many more than is needed to pass the Senate, which needs 60 votes. And it was a bipartisan effort, and it failed in the House. And that's where it's stuck. And so since then, I think many groups have lobbied the president to take action. The Dreamer Coalition, the people who got that dream, not the DREAM Act actually, because we don't have legislation. The DREAM Act failed. How many people watched the debate on the DREAM Act? A couple. It was really heartbreaking to watch those students testify and then not be able to get it. It was really sad. So the executive action protects people who are here now illegally. Of course, part of it doesn't go into effect until next month, and the biggest part won't go effect until May. What it does is it takes the pressure off those families, because any person who is the parent of a citizen born here, so basically any parent, that's why people are so angry about it, is because it suddenly protects 4 million people. And immigration, yeah, it's the issue. It's going to have to be solved. The Republicans in Congress are going to have, they have a huge opportunity to do something good. I hope that that's what happens, is that solutions are proposed. I mean, right now, just today, the House voted to fund the Department of Homeland Security. That has to get done in the next month. But of course, to defund anything related to the executive action. So that just happened today. And I'll stop there.
Okay, 3 minutes.
So the president action, the executive actions that he did, there are 2 elements in that. One is it the right set of rules, and the other is it the wrong process. Like I said earlier, this country is ruled by laws, not by people. And he, for many years, he said, there's nothing I can do at this. I'm not the emperor, I'm not the king, I don't get to decide these issues. And then he, last year decided, okay, well, Congress is not doing it. If they don't write the laws, I'll write them. So that's a big issue. And that's what's undermining a lot of the progress here. I mentioned earlier that the important thing about immigration reform is to allow people to come here legally, not to encourage more illegal immigration. And the executive actions that he does, the only things that they encourage is more illegal immigration. One of the things that happens, for example, is that if you've been here for 5 years illegally, well, you can now get, a 3-year order that you're not going to be deported and the permit to work. But only if you're here illegally. I have a friend of mine that moved from Mexico to Austin. He created a company, he got a permit for that, he brought his own money, and after 5 years, he's going to close his business because it's not working out well. But he's been here 5 years legally. which means he's losing his visa and he has to leave the country. He will be better off if he had been here illegally. So that kind of doesn't make sense, taking that approach to things. Now, one comment that was made is that I do hope that the Republicans in Congress, now that they control the House and the Senate, can get immigration reform pushed, because that's important for you and for me and for this country to get immigration fixed and to allow people to come here legally and find ways. I'll talk a bit more about how do you deal with people here undocumented. Thank you.
Okay. And this next question will go to you first, to Mr. Celis, which kind of leads into this next question is, will granting amnesty affect the U.S. economy negatively? How would that occur? And you have 5 minutes.
Sure. Okay. So immigration, in changing the laws, I always describe to people there are 3 things that you need to do. One is, how do you allow people to come here legally? Number 2 is, it's important to enforce the rule of law and protect our borders. You want to emphasize that that's important. You don't want to encourage people to break laws as a way to get here legally. And number 3, you need to deal with the 11 million people that are here undocumented. How are you going to deal with that population? You cannot just assume they're not here. Okay, so let me go back to the order of this. How do we, it's important to allow people to come here because it is in our economic self-interest. I worked for 14 years or 16 years at Microsoft, and we were bringing a lot of engineers, people, many of them with masters and PhDs in the US, to get a permit to work here. But there's a limit on how many you can bring. So Microsoft, about 4 years ago, decided to open offices in Vancouver, Canada, because they were hiring these engineers and they could not be brought here, so he was placing them there. 2 years ago, they doubled the size of that building. Makes no sense. It is in our economic self-interest to allow people like that to come here illegally. Same thing with the agriculture industry. We used to have a guest worker program that allowed people to come here legally and they could leave, and now you can't. And that industry depends on labor that is not available here. So that's number 1. We need to allow people to come here legally. Number 2, we need to enforce the rule of law. About 40% of the people here documented came here legally. They didn't cross the border or whatever. They came here with a visa and they overstayed that visa. And there's no enforcement of the rule. But they continue working and there's no mechanism for that. So we need a number of mechanisms to allow that to happen. And number 3, which is the area where they always get stuck, is what do we do with the people who are here undocumented? 11 million people. And I had explained to members of Congress and senators when I was helping the president, was, it's not fiscally responsible to think you're going to get 11 million people and ship them out of the country. It's not going to work. At the same time, you don't want to reward that behavior and give them citizenship, which is what the Senate bill that was passed 2 years ago did. You don't want to put them in the carpool lane ahead of all the people that will have to, try to follow all the rules and try and get here legally. So you need to find that space. I used to describe to them, you should not give them a green card. You should give them a yellow card. There's a couple of sport people here who have yellow cards. It's a visa to stay here, but doesn't give them citizenship, and maybe you have to pay extra taxes or something, and that is a disincentive for them to come here illegally to get one of those permits. So those are the 3 elements of that. So your question was, is granting amnesty affect the U.S. economy? Well, we have an issue that we need to fix here, which is allow people to come here legally because that affects the U.S. economy. Granting amnesty is not the way to help the economy.
And we have 5 minutes for you, Ms. Seifert, sorry. I did it, I didn't mean to. Only because there was a question earlier, and I had been saying Seifert all along, but okay.
It's like Einstein.
Yeah.
Right. So, what is amnesty anyway? Whatever it is, nobody wants it. I'm not gonna, it's what, giving everything, including citizenship, to people for nothing? Nobody's talking about that. The Senate bill, Senate 744 that was passed, it had something like a yellow card. There were this gradual, long, many years long wait before a person could qualify for a green card, and then anybody who has green card or legal residence here, has a 5-year wait before they can ask for citizenship. So what Mr. Celis just said is kind of sad. He said that the people who would be, the undocumented people who would be legalized don't get to get in that line at all. They don't get to have a chance to become a resident, not even if they're following the laws, not even if they're paying taxes, really? So the solution then is to keep those people down, like those people, those other people. That's pretty sad. If you think about the system right now, you're talking about a carpool lane or any lane, and you've heard people say in the past, oh, well, if we're going to reward these people who are here now, they have to get in the back of the line. How many people think that there is a way for somebody who's here undocumented now? How many people think there's a way for them to get a visa or work permit? Hands? You guys, I'm listening to how I'm saying that. Well, no hands went up. I'll have the camera know there. And because there's no way. That's the sad thing. If you're here undocumented, if you have overstayed your visa, or especially if you come in illegally, there is no way that you can become a legal resident. So there's no lane. There's no carpool lane. There's no bike lane. There's no lane. We need a law that would give somebody a chance to earn their way, to at least try to become legal, to get some kind of residence here. What the president just did, remember, it wasn't a law. It's not even an executive order. It's just an action directing the Department of Homeland Security to deprioritize any kind of deportation for a certain group of people, and that while we're doing that, give them a work permit. Most of the people who would be part of something like that really want to follow the law. I think in general you will not find that immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, are lawbreakers here. People want to follow the law. They want to pay taxes. They want to do everything they can to be as legal as they can because they want to have some chance someday to legalize if there comes a law, if Congress passes a law or if there's some opportunity. As far as does it affect the economy negatively, I'd say no, it affects the economy positively. If we are going to legalize people here, what will happen? People who are working now kind of not very good jobs or who may be being exploited by employers are going to have a chance to get, what? A valid Social Security number. With the valid Social Security number, they can get any job. Some of you might be dreamers or know people who got that DACA status 2 years ago, primarily for students. So that's 2 years ago. It was for a 2-year status. I'm seeing those people now come into my office, and the first thing I ask them is, so what's better about your life? What are you doing now that you weren't doing before? Almost everybody has a much better job. Somebody who was working in a restaurant or not working at all is now working for the county. Many people are able to go much further in school. Now, once you legalize people in any kind of way, they're going to do bigger things. They're going to get more jobs. They're going to be more willing to have families, to buy houses, to do all those things that lift up the economy, buy more things. So it's a huge, the Cato Institute estimates it's a $70 billion increase in the GDP if we legalize people. So that's huge. Why wouldn't we do that? Why won't Congress take this step? It's pretty hard. I mean, rewarding lawbreakers, that's a hard thing to do. And so the hard work in Congress will be to help define who the people that maybe deserve this are and what they have to do. What are all the steps they have to do to get into a line where they can get legalized? Thank you.
Okay, 3 minutes.
A couple of things. One, like I said, I talked to a lot of members of Congress on this issue. And one of the things I try to explain to them, if you go and meet any of the undocumented people, they're not evil people. All they want is permission to work. And she made a point earlier that there's really no line. You know, if they want to come here legally, there really is no line. But the mechanism is not to have them come here legally and then grant them amnesty. That, you're not solving the problem, you're encouraging more illegal immigration. I have described this many times that I believe that this country should have wide doors and high fences. You want people to come here legally, you want mechanisms for them to come here legally, and you want high fences because you want to protect this country. You want to allow people to come through the door, not encourage them to jump the fence, because that's the only way they can get a work permit here. I described this person that came here 5 years, he cannot get a work permit. People came here illegally and were here 5 years, now they can. Makes no sense that he is encouraging illegal immigration instead of legal immigration. Now, one comment that she made is that I was arguing that people are here undocumented should not pay taxes or whatever. No, get a green card, which means that doesn't give you a path to citizenship. It means you get a work permit, you can come in and out of the country. Then you need to get in the line to get the green card. That line needs to be fixed. It's a lot of fixing that needs to be done there. But you do not want to say, okay, the carpool lane is the only way for you to get out there. The only way you can succeed is by coming here undocumented, work for a while, hide, be abused, and then the president will grant you, by his phone and his pen, the power to give you citizenship when the laws did not allow it. We need to change our immigration system, and we need to follow what this country created, which is we are ruled by laws, not by people. It's not the president who is the one that is deciding what the laws are. It's Congress that needs to deal with it and fix that problem.
And also 3 minutes.
Right, we're going to the next question.
Right.
No, I guess that's probably right. I like the concept of a wide door and a high fence. Personally, I think we should have the border closed. But I think what we need to have is make it be easier to come in legally than illegally. Why not make a system where a person who wants to come here to be with their family for a few months can do it? Right now, it's very, very difficult for most countries in the world, especially including Mexico. To ask for a visitor visa is a difficult thing. It's an expensive thing, and most people get denied who are from poorer countries. If you want to come here to work, you cannot come here to work. And that is the vast majority of people who come illegally, come to work. But there's not really a way, Pedro said that even Microsoft can't get the workers they need, and so we have Microsoft Canada, Microsoft India, Microsoft Ireland. They can't get those workers, so they're going to set up shops in those other places, which is too bad for Washington. It would be great if all those workers were here. So we need a system that rewards legal behavior, certainly. I disagree that the president's executive action is going to lead those people to become any more illegal than they are. It's just temporary. It's just temporary. It only goes for 3 years, and it does not lead to any real legal status. It's not really legal. All it is a work permit. To get something legally done, it does have to go through Congress, and it is absolutely and totally incumbent on the Republican Congress to make that system. I hope that it would be there. And if they don't like it, the people who are complaining about it, it's very easy, just like what the president said the very first night of his speech, if you don't like it, pass a law. Please pass a law. I would love there to be some other kind of law that we could work with, because when we are dealing with things like even DACA, how do we know what the rules are for DACA? Well, it's not in a law. You have to go to the immigration website, and it keeps changing. Even now, for the new executive action, you go to the immigration website. Good information. The website is better and better all the time. It's uscis.gov. A lot of explanation about all the different things, especially this executive action, if you want to find out more about that.
Okay. All right. Our next quote, or next argument, I guess, would be, actually I want to read a quote first. I have a few quotes here. From Fareed Zakaria, who's a CNN host, and he said, what we see today is an American economy that boomed because of policies and developments in the 1950s and 60s, the interstate highway system, massive funding for science and technology, a public education system that was the envy of the world, and generous immigration policies. And I'm thinking also of, it's a lot of changes since my grandfather came over from Switzerland. He decided to tell his minister father that he had attended an atheist meeting, and he was kicked out of the house at age 14 and decided to come to the United States. He went through Staten Island and was doused with kerosene, found a job as a dishwasher in New York, eventually made his way around the United States and found the love of his life at the farm where he had worked. And since he was the hired hand, her parents didn't really appreciate that he was interested in their daughter, but they had 5 children, and he ended up starting a business, and a multi-million-dollar business that's still in operation today, although he's long gone. So you wonder sometimes about the American dream. Is the American dream still alive? Does this story still happen for people or not, and for whom? But I'll come back to that later. One of the questions we have here also relates somewhat to the economy, but having to do more with services. Will adopting immigration reform positively affect services such as education, the justice system, and health care? And that question would first go to Ms. Seifert.
Thank you. When I saw this question, I thought, what do they mean? And I hope I don't have to go first.
And then we reworded it so you would have to. But
yeah. So lucky me. Okay. So will adopting immigration reform, not amnesty this time, but will adopting immigration reform positively affect those things? Well, I thought about this. So as far as the education system, I guess I think yes, it will help the education system. If there are more educated people, that's a good thing. Legalized people, immigration reform hopefully would allow more people to have more opportunities, right? It would legalize people who are not legal now. Those kind of people are going to take these extra steps. They might have the extra money, they might qualify for scholarships and aid, they might be able to think longer term. And so they'll be able to go to community college and other colleges, and they'll be able to further themselves because they will not be under threat of deportation. So that's a good thing. More educated people, more smart people around, that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for public schools too, less than college, because the younger kids in school might do better. Younger kids who are born here and who are citizens because they're born here, those kids are going to do better if they feel secure that both of their parents are not under any kind of deportation threat. I mean, if immigration reform legalizes a lot of people, then it's going to be good for those young kids. And also, remember, if we have more people here who are legal, they are paying taxes, they're paying taxes for the school system, so that all sounds really good for schools. So, justice system, again, I thought, what do they mean? How will immigration reform impact the justice system? I don't know. My housemate at the moment, John, and I were talking about this earlier, and here's the idea that came up. Maybe legalizing people would allow more trust in law enforcement. There'd be less opportunities for abuse if there were not a large, undocumented, thereby ready to be exploited population, right? Because somebody whose husband or wife beats them up is going to be more ready to call the police, more ready to trust them. Or if there's some other sort of trafficking or some other major problem, immigrants will be more encouraged to report that. They'll feel better about the system because they'll be more part of it. And I keep thinking about this as if we legalize a large undocumented portion of the population. Other kinds of immigration reform, I don't know how they would impact education or the justice system. Healthcare, well, I hear that the healthcare system is spending a lot of money on people who are uninsured and undocumented. And again, if people become documented, they are more able to have better jobs that have insurance, and there would be, less emergency room spending, because it's not, what it does is it makes people less poor, right? It raises their income. So people who have more money are more able to visit doctors, would be less needing to go to emergency rooms, et cetera. So great question. I really don't know what you're getting at, but that's my first answer.
Okay, thank you. And you gave 5 minutes, so go ahead.
So the question here is, how does immigration affect services such as education, justice system, and healthcare? But it depends a little bit if you're talking about immigration on the wide doors situation, allowing people to come here legally, or are you focusing only, like most of your comments were, about allowing people who are here undocumented to get some legal status? On the first group, they are in our economic self-interest. It is in our interest in many industries to allow people to come here legally because it helps. There are many economies in which that is what you need. I already talked a little bit about Microsoft and the high-tech industry. That's an industry where, in many industries you need a lot of capital to create the machineries to be successful. In that industry, the capital you need is human capital. So allowing that capital, that human capital to come here helps. And there are other industries in which legal immigration helps. So in general, in all of these areas, we set up the immigration system so we have wider doors so people can come here legally. If you look at what happened during this administration when when Obama became president, there were about 12 million people here undocumented, and now it's like 11 million, a million down. And most of that is Mexicans, went from 8 million undocumented to about 7 million. And the reason for that is because there's no economic incentive for them to be here because the economy is not as good as it used to. Wages are lower now than when he started as president. People go and look for a job. That's what they're doing. They are not interested in breaking a law. They're interested in feeding their kids. And that's what costs it. So you want them to come here when it is in our economic self-interest. Okay, going back here to what you do with people here undocumented. Allowing any mechanism, yellow card, green card, whatever, will that affect these things negatively? It will affect some of them negatively. A lot of it has to do with our government focusing on making people dependent on the government taking care of them. And that's an issue, doesn't matter if they're an immigrant or not. I think that is the problem that is tied normally to that conversation. As far as education is concerned, about 20% of the people in this state that are under the age of 20 are immigrants. 20%. Oh, sorry, that's all Latinos. I got my numbers confused. 20% of them are Latinos. Many of them are undocumented. You want to encourage them to succeed. It is in our interest for them to succeed. One of the things I worked last year was in something called the Real Hope Act, which is, hey, we already invested in these kids. We already got them to college. Now they're going to university. Let's keep investing in them. Because it is in our self-interest to have them succeed. We don't want them to become gang members. We want them to get a degree. We want them to create jobs and help our economy. One more comment having to do with the people who are here legally, people like me. In this state, 13.5% of the population in this state, 13.5% are immigrants. People who were not born in this country that came here. And about 14% of businesses that were created in this state are created by immigrants. So these are people that help our economy, help our country, and make this country better. It's not just the story of this country, is what's in the future of this country.
And 3 minutes response.
Human capital helps industries, I agree. I think that you and I agree on many things. I was interested to hear the numbers. Wages are lower and people are leaving, right? Is that what you said? There's about 1 million people less now. I would posit that there's at least 2 million people less now because the Obama administration has deported more people than any previous presidency ever. And the pro-immigrant advocates are very much on the president's case about that because it's very harsh. And it's over 2 million people. And that is something that's the deportation system, the detention system, all that's not really in our, we can maybe come to that later, but I just wanted to respond to that. So, and you started this thing with, or the quote here, with, is the American dream still alive? I think it's pretty hard for somebody who has an idea or a dream and they're in another country and they want to come here to just come here. I agree that if you happen to be here illegally and you had a child here, you would qualify for this temporary permit, but that doesn't qualify for you to build your dreams here. It doesn't enable you to start a business and have a long-range plan. There was a guy in my office today from Bulgaria, and he came here, I think, in 98 or 99 to go to school, and he finished school and he got married, and he couldn't get his green card approved, and so he became illegal, and he's been illegal here all this time. And well, what can he do? He's got all kinds of business ideas, but he's now undocumented. He's stuck, like Pedro's friend. So we have that. I mean, that guy in our current system can't fix his status. It's kind of sad. I agree that we should help the young people that are here. Is the Real Hope Act what the governor signed?
He signed it about 11 months ago.
So that is helps undocumented people have.
What it does is, about 11 years ago, we passed in the state law that allows people that went to college here to go to state universities and pay in-state tuition. And this allows them to apply for the state need grants, which before they couldn't.
Oh, right. So qualify for financial aid. Right. We should do everything we can to reward young people who are achievers, whether they're immigrants or not immigrants. People who were undocumented had a lot of barriers before these things came to pass. Washington State is very progressive about this. Washington State's Attorney General just joined to support the President's executive action recently too. So Washington State is looking forward. They're trying to support the immigrants, and we are trying to support the immigrants who are here. I hope we continue to do that.
Okay. Okay. We're doing 3 minutes as well.
I keep coming back to, you need to separate legal immigration from illegal immigration, or people are here undocumented. We need to deal with the population. 11 million people are here undocumented. It's not fiscally responsible to think that your plan is to deport them. It's not good for them or for us for them to be living in the shadows of this home. You know, where they're afraid or they get stopped for a speeding ticket or something like that because, you know, they avoid being abused and reporting to the police because they are afraid to go to the police. It's not good for them, it's not good for us. But you cannot go down the path of saying we're going to focus on encouraging illegal immigration and reward that behavior. You still need to fix wide doors and high fences. You need to address that. And you need to help that community without putting them ahead of all the people who are following the laws. So that's, you know, a topic that I keep saying again and again, because it's not a lack of compassion for individuals that are here undocumented. They're pretty much all they want is something for their kids. They're working for that purpose, not to break a law. But you cannot turn this country into one in which you're not going to enforce the rule of law, and we're going to have a president that is writing the laws instead of Congress. Congress needs to deal with this. It's important. I was running for Congress last time because I feel we need people in Congress that can deal with important issues like this, that know how to get things accomplished. But the president is doing it harder for Congress to get things accomplished by putting them in this position.
Okay, if you'll indulge me, I might deviate a little bit from our next argument. I'll read another quote and then ask you, the next question will be maybe a little broader in a sense, because I think that you agree on a lot of things that I'd like to find out where your areas of disagreement are. Ben Shapiro said that Obama wants to raise the issue of immigration reform so that he can demonize Republicans as anti-Hispanic. And that's why Obama ignores the broad support for an immigration plan that would provide border security once and for all, and then deal with the illegal immigrants who live here. I think you might have differences of opinion on that. But my question would be, as I'm listening to your debate, what should the limits of immigration be? You say wide doors, how wide? Who should be allowed to come in? Under what conditions? And how long should it take for them to become U.S. citizens? And that gets us to some of the issues of rights. How long do they have to be in this country before they have the right to vote and so on? So that question, I guess, would go to you first. We only have 4 minutes, but if you need more time, I understand. So.
Yeah, well, so it's a complicated answer to a complicated question. What exactly are you going to allow for people to come here legally? And it has to be based on, is this in our economic self-interest? That's kind of the process that you need to do to decide, what people should come here legally. So for example, people that go to university here at college should get a work permit to stay in this country if they want to. Simple, don't make it complicated. Microsoft has to go through all kinds of jumps to be able to give a work permit to somebody. And that permit allows them to work only for Microsoft for 3 years. And they can extend it for 3 more years. And if in the process they don't get another mechanism, they have to leave the country. Keep it simple. If they get that work permit and they pay taxes for a number of years and they earn now some money, they should be allowed to get a green card. Keep it simple. Economic needs. There's markets in which we need people to come here legally, and one of the ones that's a little bit complicated is the farming area. How do we allow people to come here and work with them? There used to be something called a Bracero program between Mexico and the U.S. between 1947 to 1960 something. It was a pretty good program. It allowed people that were in Mexico to get a visa to come and work in the U.S. as workers that were, moving from one farm area to another. They have to do a background check in Mexico, they get their visa, they come here, they pay taxes here, that they get back when they go back to Mexico, they come in and out, and they could fill an economic need. And based on that economic needs, you can control, how many people you have. It's basically based on that. You adjust the numbers as needed by the economy. I mentioned under this administration the number of jobs, number of people looking for work, or the workforce participation rate has gone down, and the median salary of people has gone down. So there's less of a need than in the previous administration where the economy was doing better. And based on that, you adjust your numbers.
And also 4 minutes.
All right. Pedro, you keep saying that we have to separate the legal and the illegal. I think we don't. I think you have to deal with them both at the same time, and it's just much more comfortable to separate the legal and the illegal and say those are the illegal people and we don't have to deal with them because they are over there and they're also down there. That's wrong. I think if we are going to fix the immigration system, we have to fix it at once, and even though it doesn't sound great, we're going to have to let those people who are here have legal status. They're just workers. And of course, we want to fix it in the future, but I don't think we should punish the people who are here, who already are in this kind of substandard way because they're undocumented. We need to let them become residents. We need to let them become residents by, we used to call it an earned amnesty. So have there be many hurdles, but have them be able to get to the same level as any other resident in this country. Everybody understands what that is. A green card is permanent residence. When somebody has permanent residence, our laws don't need to be changed. 5 years of permanent residence qualifies you to seek citizenship if you want. You don't have to. You can be a permanent resident forever. So I think that a system should be devised that people can become legal, and when they're legal, they're considered legal like anybody else, not to have a third system. And how many should there be? Actually, I'm very much in agreement with you that the economy should set that. And we should have a non-political system that quickly develops data about what does the economy need so that we can quickly change the numbers. The temporary work system that Microsoft uses and lots of other companies for high-tech workers, it allows now only 65,000 a year, and slightly more if you're talking about master's degree people. And it's a lottery. So it's so ridiculous. A person can graduate first in their class in some high-tech area, and Microsoft wants them. And so they have to apply 6 months in advance of when the visa is available, and that 6-month day is April 1st. And on April 1st, so there's only 65,000 visas, or maybe 90, depending on how you count them. And on that day, like 200-some thousand people apply. It's a lottery. Isn't that ridiculous? So even the most talented person, the most highest grade person from St. Martin's University that gets this major job offer from Microsoft has no guarantee. Crazy. So if the companies, if the economy needs workers, we should be able to let the system supply the workers. So I guess I would agree that for the business side, and right now our immigration system is mostly family-based. More of the visas come from that. And those numbers and quotas are very outdated too. That's why it took his brother more than 17 years to get here. If you're a permanent resident and you're making a petition for your spouse or your young children, how many months do you think it would take, or years? It's years. It's like 3 years or 5 years. It's a very long time. That's shameful, embarrassing. It's because the system is outdated. We need to have more people looking at those numbers more frequently so that we can adjust. The system needs to be adjustable, not political. Right now it's political, and Congress, this is hard. I mean, Congress does not want to deal with this illegal immigration situation. It's very radioactive. If they do the wrong thing, they're all going to lose their seats. So I'm not saying it's easy, it's going to be very hard, but it is absolutely in the lap of the Republican Congress right now, and we need to support them with positive ideas for positive changes for these next couple years.
One of the comments she made that I disagree on is that I think we should not deal at all with the people who are here undocumented. I said there are 3 things that you need to do with our immigration system. One is allow people to come here legally, wide doors, based on our economy. Number 2, enforce the rule of law. You need to enforce that people that are here and are working, really have a permit to work. That's high fences. And number 3, you need to deal with the people here undocumented. Most of the issues that this president has been pushing for has to do with only that one. Only allowing people who are here undocumented certain privileges that other people can't get. And by doing that, he's making it harder for the conversation to move forward. In Congress, they're stuck with many things, like I said already. Immigration is a hot topic. This is what they don't, hot potato they call it, they don't want to touch it. And that makes the whole situation harder by making it the focus of the immigration system. It's not the focus. You need to do not put them ahead in the carpool lane, as they call it, of the other people who are coming here illegally, but you need to give them some path where they can get on a line, which right now there's not much in that line. You need to get that line.
They're just workers. The people who are here are just workers. So Congress has a hard time to get to the issue of the undocumented. You always hear, and I believe I read on your website about your position that we need to secure the border first. And people from my side laugh at that because what does that mean? I mean, we're deporting more people than ever before. We have a 33,000 per day bed quota. How many people do that? A lot of that is economically driven because companies have built those jails, and so states make laws, and the federal Congress makes laws that encourages a lot of detention. So, and I think we've made great strides in terms of border security. There are less people trying to cross. There are more people apprehended. So the border is probably as secure as it's going to get. If that's off the table, then what do? Then I think we have to have the wide, I love that high fence and wide door. We need to have a system where more people can come to work temporarily for a farm, to work temporarily for Microsoft, that they can come and go and they're not locked in here. I think that is the kind of system we need to do, and we just can't separate. I want to deal with both the undocumented population and fix the legal system too. I don't think you should separate them at all. I think we should call a worker a worker.
Okay, thank you. That was an interesting response. In the interest of time, I think because we do have some wide areas of agreement and some areas of disagreement, maybe I'll just allow time for closing statements so then we can open it up to the floor. But also, maybe in those statements, if you can point out areas where you may disagree with each other and what the resolution to that should be. Okay, so Ms. Seifert will be first.
Okay. All right. I haven't been really prepared closing statement. But I guess I would say that the immigration system we have right now is quite dysfunctional. It doesn't help anybody, really. It doesn't help families. It doesn't help businesses. As a matter of fact, it hurts businesses. Businesses are blocked from expanding. They can't get the workers they need. Every year at the time of the agriculture harvest, the farmers worry. A lot of fruit is left on the field each year because they cannot get the workers. Why can't they get the workers? Well, they can't get the workers because the undocumented workers, which, actually, let me back that up. They can't get the workers. They put the word out that they want workers. Our system about who's documented and who's not in this country is from 1986, and it never got finished. So there isn't really this bulletproof ID card that a person can show that they're documented. I don't think that employers are doing something wrong here. Employers are following the law that was set in 1986 that says you have to show some kind of ID and some kind of social security card, and they can't be document experts. So the employers hire who shows up. And lately it's not enough people, whether they're documented or whether they're undocumented. So we need to have a system that helps make that more secure. And that would help the country's security as well. If we can bring people out of the shadows and register them, that is going to be a good thing. No more people in the shadows would be a great thing. If families can be reunited more quickly, and if the rules about that are more fair, that would be great. I think we should secure our border. I think that our system currently rewards lawlessness, and that's not great. We need to have a system that rewards people who do the right things and doesn't encourage. And I don't believe that what the president just did encourages lawless behavior, because remember, he said you had to have been here by the year 2010. You had to come 5 years ago. So it's not going to encourage new people. And in fact, there's very specific parts of the executive action where he said, if you have come after a certain date, you absolutely won't be part of this. So what the president did is just a Band-Aid. It's a temporary measure. It's not any kind of permanent solution, and he never intended it to be a permanent solution. It's going to be good for a while for some people, but those permits are for 3 years, and in 3 years we'll have a different president. It might not be a Democratic president, and it might not be a president who wants that program to continue. So all of these people who could benefit from the temporary action, there's no guarantee at all that they'll be able to keep that. And now they've come forward, so they would be subject to being kicked out of the country if it came to that. So we need a system that makes more sense. Right now, what we have doesn't help anybody, and we have a little bit of executive action which sort of stirs things up in a way, and not enough work on the legal system. We need Congress to work on making a positive legal system that makes sense for families, for businesses, and doesn't focus so much on deportation and detention.
Okay. Mr. Celis? Yeah.
So I kind of, she moved a little bit to more of my point of view. The immigration system is dysfunctional. We agree on that. Securing the border is important. And what the president is doing is rewarding lawless behavior. He's encouraging more of that, as opposed to focusing on we need to allow legal immigration. If you're not addressing that, don't focus on the other one, because you're just making it harder to lead the thing that's important. Three things again. You want to allow people to come here legally, the wide doors. You want to enforce the rule of law, the high fences. And you need to deal with the population that is here. You're not going to deport 11 million people, but you don't want to reward that behavior and have them ahead of the other people that want to come here legally. One of the things that I talk a lot is about enforcing the rule of law. There's something called e-verify, which is a mechanism which is when you go and work someplace, they have to verify the number you're telling them is actually valid. And that has been a big debate in Congress. Should we enforce that or not? I think we should when we deal with the immigration system. If you do that first, you're not helping. If you just deal with the people here undocumented also first, you're not helping. You need to allow people to come here legally and have a mechanism for them to get some work permit, and then it's easier to enforce the rule of law. The rule of law and securing the border is important for several reasons. One is our national security. I lived in Monterrey, Mexico. From here going to Vancouver, Canada is like for me going to the U.S. Right? We went shopping there every once in a while. I know the mechanisms there. And you really, what happens right now with people coming here undocumented is that you have a border in which you are trying to catch a busboy as opposed to catching a criminal. Somebody moving drugs, moving guns, moving things like that. The immigration system, the people who are protecting the border are completely busy just dealing with a little boy crossing the country. And that boy is not a danger for us. And they're not focusing on the things that are real dangers to us because there's no mechanism for people to come here legally. So that's why I encourage that it's very important to protect our border and secure the rule of law because it's important for our national security. Three things. Allow people to come here legally, the wide doors, enforce the rule of law, the high fences, and deal with 11 million people here, get them out of the shadows, but don't put them ahead of other people.
Okay, I want to thank our debaters. Very informative and interesting debate, and you agreed more than I thought you would. So.